The life of an entrepreneur is definitely one that has a lot of ups and downs, as many of your guests could attest to, as you can attest, I'm sure. And so when I mentioned earlier the game SoulForge, we've since relaunched it, but at the time it was a purely digital trading card game. And I partnered with Richard Garfield, right? This is the guy that created Magic the Gathering. This is a dream come true for me. And I'll tell you the brief story of so we meet, we're at a game conference, I'd seen him around before, but we hadn't really met. And we're at a game conference called PAX Dev, which is like a developer conference. And he's giving a talk on design. So of course I'm in the audience listening because I want to learn from the master. And he says at the end, there's a Q&A, and then somebody asks him, hey, what's your favorite game right now? And he says Ascension. And I literally jump up out of my seat from the back of the audience and go, woohoo, like a stupid kid, right? Everybody laughs, but it gives me the opening. And so I go and I start a conversation with him after the talk. And we start talking and we get excited. It's clear we're both excited about the same project. And so SoulForge is born. Now, this was a project that was my first digital game I'd ever done. And I was a little cocky at this point, I won't lie. I succeeded. My first project, Ascension, was a huge success. Everything I touch turns to gold. It's all going to be great. We're doubling in size every year. And we do a crowdfund. And I thought it was going to cost like $250,000 to make that game. And we crowdfund with that target. And we end up crowdfunding double that goal, almost double that goal, like $500,000. It's like, oh, this is amazing. We're going to crush it. We're so good. And as it turns out, making digital games is very expensive. And that cost $3 million to make.
Oh, man.
And so I had to go and try to raise funds again. And, we have to launch the game before we're ready. And again, we have followers, we have cash, but the cash burn is over time. I can see the cash burn is higher than the income and it's not working. And I overextend. I start borrowing more money. I start trying to I know I can make this work. I'm not going to let it go. This is my baby. I'm going to keep it going.
How are you raising and borrowing money? Just if you don't mind adding a little more detail.
So it starts off with kind of friends and family, convertible notes kind of round. So that means they give me a loan, and then in theory it turns into equity over time as we get, And then after that, then I start taking some of those refactoring loans like you talked about, right? So I'm getting loans against my future income on Ascension to pay for SoulForge, and then, starting to run up credit cards and all the things really are not supposed to do.
Yep.
And I get to a point where I have to finally realize wow, I'm going to go bankrupt. I can't do this anymore. I'm going to lose everything. And this was just one of the hardest things that I have ever faced, because not only is it I feel like I owe it to my team, who I'm going to have to lay off, these people whose livelihoods depend on it. We have fans and people who love the game. And in a traditional tabletop game, if I stop making Ascension, let's say, right, you still have your copy of Ascension at home, and you can play it for as long as you want. It doesn't matter if I don't make any more. But when I stop making SoulForge, a digital game, that means the servers turn off. That means your entire collection is gone. That means you can't play it anymore. Yeah. Everything you spent, it's all gone. So I'm failing myself. I'm failing my team. I'm failing the fans, everything. And I have to make some very, very hard decisions. And
not to mention the friends and family.
Of course, yeah. I literally had my parents had taken a loan against their house to help me at one point. I am so overextended. I am so in the thick of it and shame, and it is tough. And I have to come to a realization and come to the other side of it, where I had to go through this process of accepting. I had to get to the other place, okay, it happened. I've lost everything. I failed. Now what? Right now, this is a different kind of fear-setting exercise, because now I'm on the other side of my worst nightmare. And took me a little while, but it's okay, you know what? I will still be alive. I will be able to pay off some of these debts over time with some other things. I can recover from this. It's going to be okay. The people who got laid off, they're going to get another job, right? It was not easy. But then I once I accepted that worst case outcome, and then I was able to say, okay, now how do I make this less likely? And so I had to lay people off, but I also renegotiated debts and negotiated payment plans and reduced our overhead and took on more contract work. And slowly but surely, I was able to dig myself out of the hole. And I don't think there's any chance I would have been able to do that if not for being mentally ready with, okay, I've lost it all. Right? I'm talking to bankruptcy attorneys, right? And that gives you a different kind of attitude and approach when you're trying to, you're negotiating with a lender that you owe money to. They're you owe me money, you should collect. I'm I know, but either I'm going to go bankrupt, you're not going to get anything, or we're going to work something out, and I'm going to do my best to pay you off. And so fortunately, I was able to turn that around. And not only did I learn, the important lessons, like you can go through a lot and you can recover from it, but also to, not put myself in that position again, right? Not to overextend to that degree, and learn to make smaller bets and grow as you can. That was a very important and powerful thing, which then, of course, I've now been able to come back to with reinvigorating that very same game.